He erased me, even while I was carrying his child. That red carpet night, amidst hundreds of camera lenses and blazing lights, I saw my husband arm in arm with another woman. She smiled, posed, as if she were the rightful wife, while all of Hollywood called her by my last name. But no one knew the truth. I was the real wife, and I was carrying his unborn child. In 60 seconds on live television, I turned the most painful moment of my life into a shattering act of revenge, bringing his career and reputation crashing down before the world's eyes. What would you do if the world forgot you existed? Alicia Thompson once believed her life was entering its most beautiful chapter. At 28, she had built a marketing company from a small Los Angeles apartment, transforming it in just a few years into a business coveted by major brands. She met Brandon on an ordinary morning at a West Hollywood cafe. He approached with a charming smile, eyes bright with ambition, and a way of speaking that made the woman sitting across from him feel like the center of the universe. They dated quickly, married within a year, and in those early days, Alicia thought she was luckier than anyone else. Brandon was rising as a promising film producer. He spoke of Hollywood with passion, as if it were a mountain he was born to conquer, and Alicia, with the trust and love of a young wife, stood by his side, cheering every step. The small apartment soon gave way to a brightly lit home in the Hollywood Hills. They decorated the master bedroom with modern art, luxurious sofas, and a long wooden dining table where Alicia envisioned warm family gatherings. She didn't just dream of a successful career, but of a family, a complete home. That dream felt more real than ever when Alicia discovered she was pregnant. The news overwhelmed her with joy. Brandon hugged her tightly that day, spinning her around the living room, repeating, "We're going to be parents. You and the baby are my everything." Those words etched themselves into Alicia's mind, planting a firm belief that they were stepping into the happiest chapter of their shared life. In the early weeks of pregnancy, Alicia was both exhausted and elated. Mornings were spent working, afternoons resting, and evenings waiting for Brandon to come home for dinner. He always had stories to tell, about a famous director he'd met, an exclusive party where he toasted with powerful people, or a film project that could attract millions in investment. Alicia listened, eyes sparkling with pride, though sometimes her heart twinged when she realized she'd never been invited to any of those events. When she asked why, Brandon smiled gently, rubbed her belly, and said, "You wouldn't like those events, babe. It's all work, all industry politics. You just rest, take care of our baby, and I'll handle the rest." It sounded reasonable. Alicia was busy with her company, and pregnancy left her more tired than usual. She nodded, accepted it, and told herself her husband was being caring. But sometimes, in the quiet evenings alone in bed, Alicia felt a hollowness. The spacious house suddenly seemed too silent. She hugged her pillow, stroked her belly, and whispered to her unborn child that everything would be okay, that their dad was just busy, that these small sacrifices would lead to a bright future for their family. Her love for Brandon was a sturdy wall, shielding her from the creeping winds of doubt. At least, she convinced herself it was. Friends teased her at times. Carmen, her best friend from college, would ask, "So, when do we get to meet Brandon's legendary Hollywood friends? He's keeping them under wraps, huh?" Alicia laughed it off, deflecting, finding excuses to defend her husband. She didn't want anyone to think anything was wrong. In her mind, Brandon was the man who'd sworn his love under starry nights, who'd placed his hand on her belly and promised to cherish both her and their child forever. How could a man like that deliberately hide her? Dear audience, grab a glass of water, take a moment to relax, and keep listening to the story. The twists are still to come. And please drop a comment below letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. It's always a joy to see who's joining us from around the world. Drop a 1 in the comments if you find this story gripping, so we can keep bringing you more captivating tales. Then, the late nights started piling up. Brandon's phone often buzzed when he was home, but he'd step outside to answer, his voice hushed as if to keep her from hearing. Alicia, wanting to trust, wanting to keep her heart calm for the baby, didn't press him too hard. But each time she looked in the mirror, seeing her belly grow, a quiet fear stirred. Would this child be born into a complete family, or was she nurturing it in a world full of secrets? She reassured herself it was just the pressure of his career. Hollywood was a cutthroat game, and Brandon needed to focus on building his image. But deep down, a voice whispered to Alicia that something wasn't right. That voice grew louder when she realized, in their 3 years of dating and marriage, she'd never met a single one of Brandon's industry friends. Not a director, not a producer, not an actor had ever crossed their doorstep. He lived in 2 worlds, one at home with Alicia, and a glittering one she'd never been allowed to enter. One night, as Brandon slipped into a sleek tuxedo and said he was meeting an old partner, Alicia stood at the window, watching him leave. The baby kicked softly, like a signal. For the first time, she felt her heart both ache and tremble with unease. In that moment, Alicia knew the fairy tale was never meant to last. A small crack appeared in the shimmering mirror of their marriage, and soon it would shatter into 1,000 pieces. The morning began with pale golden sunlight filtering into the spacious bedroom. Alicia sat at the dining table, holding a glass of orange juice, her eyes scanning her phone. Her belly was noticeably round now, the beige maternity dress hugging her frame. The baby stirred gently, making her smile. But that fragile joy dissolved when her finger paused on a photo. Brandon, in a sharp gray suit, was laughing and raising a glass at an event he'd called boring, just technical partners. Beside him were strangers, and in the corner of the frame, standing out like a spotlight, was a blonde woman with red lips, her sequined dress clinging to a perfect figure. Her name was clear in the caption, Chelsea Morrison, rising actress, model, muse of the night. Alicia's heart stopped. She'd seen that face before, in blurry group photos Brandon reposted from industry friends. Back then, she hadn't thought much of it, assuming Chelsea was just a passing colleague. But now, Chelsea was everywhere. Not just in one photo, but in a series of them. From a lavish Beverly Hills party to a small film screening in Santa Monica. Always near Brandon. Always smiling as if they shared a private joke only they understood. Alicia placed a hand on her belly, taking a deep breath. She told herself she might be overreacting. In Hollywood, people mingled, took photos, built their image. Brandon had said as much. He'd told her, "You'd be bored to death, babe. It's all fake smiles for work." But the way Chelsea leaned into Brandon, the way his eyes met hers through the lens, didn't look like work. In the days that followed, Chelsea became a shadow lurking in their every conversation, though Brandon never mentioned her directly. When Alicia asked, "Who'd you meet today?" he answered vaguely, "Oh, some partners, a few people I'm mentoring." When she pressed, "Anyone I'd know?" he gave a strained laugh. "You wouldn't care, just some young actresses needing guidance." Then he'd change the subject or lean down to kiss her belly, as if that gentle gesture could fill the gaps in his answers. But a wife's instincts, and even more, a mother's instincts, weren't easily fooled. Alicia started noticing small details. The scent of unfamiliar perfume on Brandon's shirt sweeter, more feminine, not her own familiar fragrance. His schedule grew denser, with dinners stretching past midnight. His phone was often face down on the table, screen dark, as if the glow of incoming messages might reveal a truth he didn't want exposed. One afternoon, resting in her home office, Alicia stumbled across an online article about an independent film event. A photo showed Brandon with a group of young actors, Chelsea right beside him, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The article described her as the close companion of rising producer Brandon Thompson. Alicia's heart clenched. Close companion. The words echoed in her mind, each one a knife twisting deeper. That night, when Brandon came home, Alicia almost confronted him. But as he walked in, shedding his jacket, kissing her lightly, then kneeling to whisper to her belly, "Daddy's home, little one." Tears welled up. She couldn't do it. How could she confront him when their baby was listening to her every heartbeat? How could she start a fight that might send her blood pressure soaring, endangering the tiny life inside her? So Alicia stayed silent. But that silence wasn't acceptance. It was like a seed of doubt, growing stronger every day. Carmen noticed the change in her friend's eyes. One evening, as they sipped herbal tea, Carmen asked bluntly, "Are you sure Brandon's okay? I'm seeing his name linked to that Chelsea girl a bit too much." Alicia forced a smile, rubbing her belly. "It's probably just work." "He says so." But Carmen's eyes hardened. What kind of work involves that much hand-holding and eye contact? The question haunted Alicia all night, even as she lay in bed, listening to the baby's heartbeat through a portable ultrasound. In those moments, Alicia felt caught between two worlds. On one side was Brandon, the devoted husband, the future father, the man who'd promised to build a family with her. On the other were the photos, the captions. Chelsea's intimate shoulder touches pieces of a world where Alicia was entirely absent. She remembered her mother's advice. When you're pregnant, listen to your instincts. A mother's intuition will tell you the truth. And now, that intuition was screaming. Alicia began saving photos, screenshotting articles, noting every time Brandon came home late. She was no longer the blindly trusting wife. She was becoming a detective in her own marriage, not because she wanted to, but because she had to protect her child. One weekend night, as Brandon left the house for a dinner with investors, Alicia stood at the window, watching him go. She placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "Mommy's going to find the truth. For me, for you." And for the first time in months, instead of hiding in fear, Alicia felt a fire rising in her chest. A fire of doubt, but also of determination. The Los Angeles sky that night draped itself in deep velvet, speckled with faint stars dimmed by the city's glow. Alicia sat in her car, hands gripping the steering wheel, her heart pounding so hard she could almost hear the blood rushing in her ears. Brandon had just left the house, dressed sharply in a navy suit, repeating his familiar line, "I'm meeting investors. Don't wait up. I'll be late." The words were smooth, like a rehearsed script, but tonight, instead of sitting calmly in the living room, Alicia decided to break the pattern. She started the car, tailing his sedan, keeping just enough distance to avoid detection. Her 6-month pregnant belly made every brake press shift her body, but her hands stayed steady. In the rearview mirror, Alicia caught a glimpse of her own face eyes sunken from sleepless nights, but her gaze harder than ever. She was no longer the passive wife waiting for scraps of truth from her husband's lies. She was hunting for the truth. Brandon's car turned into Beverly Hills, where streets sparkled with lights, elegant porches, and restaurants where a single dinner cost a month's salary for most. He stopped at a renowned French restaurant, a haunt for directors, actors, and powerful producers. Alicia parked a few blocks away, her heart hammering. She lowered the window, letting the night air rush in, breathing deeply as if drawing courage from the distant sky. Brandon stepped out of his car, handing his keys to the valet. He adjusted his tie, glanced at his phone, and strode into the restaurant. Alicia leaned down in her seat, her heart pausing for a moment. As the restaurant door closed behind him, she sat up, eyes locked on the entrance, waiting. 20 minutes later, a sleek red sports car pulled up, and out stepped Chelsea. She wore a fitted red dress, glittering heels, her blonde hair softly curled over her shoulders. She didn't rush. Each step was a statement, as if she knew she'd be the center of any frame. Brandon stood from a corner table, and as Chelsea approached, he opened his arms. The embrace wasn't a polite greeting. It was long, warm, intimate, enough to make Alicia, watching from across the street, feel her stomach twist. Chelsea sat at a table for two in a cozy corner, where soft golden light cast an intimate glow. From her parked car, Alicia could see through the wide glass window. She saw every gesture. Brandon leaned toward Chelsea, his hand resting on hers on the table. Chelsea tilted her head back, laughing, her eyes sparkling as if the world contained only the two of them. Alicia placed a hand on her belly. The baby kicked lightly, but in that moment, it felt like a warning bell. She whispered to herself, "You see that, baby? Your dad's sitting over there." The words caught in her throat, but tears disobeyed, streaming hot down her cheeks. 2 hours passed like torture. Alicia sat motionless, watching, each breath heavy as if carrying a suppressed volcano. She saw Brandon raise a glass of wine, his hand brushing Chelsea's face as she laughed. Those gestures had once been Alicia's alone, now displayed openly for someone else. When dinner ended, Brandon stood, ever the gentleman, pulling out Chelsea's chair, helping her with her coat. At the door, he slipped an arm around her waist, and they stepped out like a couple unafraid of the world. Their smiles made Alicia feel sick. She bowed her head to the steering wheel, eyes closed, trying to stop the trembling coursing through her. In that moment, the world seemed to collapse. But amid the wreckage, one thing was clear. The truth was no longer a suspicion. Brandon wasn't just cheating. He'd built a separate, public, dazzling life where Chelsea was his companion, And Alicia, the wife, the mother of his unborn child, was a shadow erased from every frame. As Brandon and Chelsea left the restaurant, their laughter echoing into the Beverly Hills night, Alicia started the car. She drove home in silence, each mile stretching like a century. When the front door opened to Brandon at midnight, Alicia was in bed, pretending to sleep. He leaned in, kissed her cheek, the faint scent of unfamiliar perfume trailing behind. In the darkness, Alicia opened her eyes, staring at the ceiling. Her heart was shattered, but in her chest, a fire of anger began to blaze. The baby stirred again, as if reminding her she wasn't alone. From this moment, Alicia knew she could no longer pretend. After that Beverly Hills night, Alicia was no longer in the dark. The image of Brandon's arm around Chelsea's waist, his gaze on her, the radiant smile in front of dozens at the upscale restaurant, it was a knife carved deep into her heart. But it also flung open a door she'd never dared cross before. The door to the truth. In the days that followed, Alicia became a detective in her own marriage. She no longer waited for Brandon to come home or trusted his vague answers. She began tracing Chelsea's trail. On social media, Chelsea was everywhere. A photo from an awards after-party, Brandon beside her, his hand resting lightly on her back like a familiar intimacy. Another from a small film screening, their heads close, whispering something meant only for them. But the most painful part wasn't the photos. It was the captions. Brandon Thompson and his stunning girlfriend Chelsea Morrison attended last night's event. The captivating companion of rising producer Brandon Thompson steals the spotlight on the red carpet. Those words, cold and official, spread across online tabloids and social media, and no one, not a single soul, knew Alicia existed. She printed the articles, laid them on her desk, staring at each word, each image. To the public, Brandon was a successful bachelor, arm in arm with a young, blonde beauty who fit Hollywood's mold. Alicia, the black pregnant wife, was erased from the picture. One morning, sitting in the living room, a podcast interview played on her laptop, Brandon's voice booming through the speakers. Alicia's hand trembled on her glass of water, her eyes glued to her husband on the screen. The host asked, "Brandon, how's your love life these days? Anyone special?" Brandon grinned, his face glowing as if hearing sweet music. Then he said, "Yeah, I'm in an amazing relationship. She's a talented actress, always supporting my career. I'm truly grateful for her." But Alicia's hand went to her belly, feeling a strong kick from the baby. Each word from Brandon pierced her like a needle through skin. The man who'd whispered lifelong promises to her was now publicly introducing another woman as his companion. Not just cheating, Brandon had chosen to craft a new story, one where Chelsea was his official girlfriend, and Alicia and their unborn child didn't exist. She stood, pacing the room, tears streaming but her eyes blazing. The pent-up humiliation burst free. This wasn't just betrayal, it was erasure. It was being wiped from the picture because she didn't fit the image Brandon wanted to sell to Hollywood. A black pregnant wife, unfit for glitzy parties and flashing cameras. In her anger, Alicia recalled the nights Brandon told her, "You'd be bored to death, babe. It's all work talk." Now she understood. He didn't want her there, not because she'd be bored, but because her presence didn't serve his image. Chelsea, with her blonde hair and Instagram smile, was the perfect accessory for his career. That evening, Alicia reopened everything she'd collected. Photos, articles, videos. She sat for hours, her pregnant belly before her, hand resting on it as if shielding her baby from invisible knives. And she realized, if she stayed silent, Brandon would forever define her as invisible. Late that night, Brandon came home, liquor lingering on his clothes, his face beaming as if he'd stepped out of a hit film. He looked at Alicia, gave a faint smile. "You're still up?" Alicia just stared, saying nothing. In her eyes, he was no longer her husband but an actor playing a lifelong role, one she'd never agreed to script. Alicia lay in bed, turning toward the window, hearing Brandon mutter something before heading to the bathroom. She didn't cry. No tears could express this pain. Instead, a vague plan began to form in her heart. If Brandon wanted to make her a shadow, she'd step into the light. If he wanted Chelsea to be his official companion, Alicia would show the world who the real woman beside Brandon was, and no one could deny it, because the proof was in her body. the child growing inside her. In the dark, Alicia placed a hand on her belly, whispering, "I promise no one will erase you. I promise." The invitation sat on the desk, printed on elegant white paper with shimmering embossed letters, "World Premiere, Paramount Studios." Brandon had received it weeks earlier, tossing it into the house like a minor detail in his busy life. "I'll be late that night. Don't wait up. Just work stuff." The usual smooth line. But this time, Alicia wasn't the wife who nodded silently. She stared at the invitation, her belly round under thin fabric. The baby kicked softly, as if urging her on. Every piece of the betrayal was now clear. Chelsea would be there with Brandon, not just as his girlfriend, but as his public wife. All of Hollywood would photograph them, call their names, maybe even call Chelsea by the Thompson name. And if Alicia stayed silent, the world would never know she or her unborn child existed. That night, Alicia sat by the window for hours, city lights reflecting on her face. She recalled every promise Brandon made when she told him she was pregnant. "I'll always protect you and our baby." The irony stung. He protected his career, his image. Chelsea but erased the wife carrying his blood. Alicia's heart ached, but in that pain, a different strength rose. If Brandon had cast her into darkness, she'd step straight into the light. 3 days before the event, Alicia began preparing. She called Carmen, the only friend she still trusted. "I need to look like a queen," Alicia said, her voice resolute. Carmen didn't ask questions. She understood. They found a stylist who'd worked with A-list stars. When Alicia entered the studio, her pregnant belly made her hesitate. But the stylist looked at her once and smiled. "We're going to make this your strength. No hiding, no shrinking. You'll walk out like a goddess carrying life." They chose a deep emerald gown, soft satin hugging her body, accentuating her warm brown skin and the curves of her pregnancy. The waist was tailored to highlight her belly, not conceal it. The off-the-shoulder cut was sensual, the floor-length hem regal, as if she'd stepped from a royal portrait. When Alicia tried it on, she looked in the mirror, seeing not a victim but a symbol for the first time in months. Next was her hair. The stylist smoothed her soft curls, pinning them into an elegant updo with a few strands falling to frame her face. The makeup was done with steady strokes, sharp eyeliner, bold red lips, glowing skin. When finished, Alicia looked at herself in the mirror. Gone was the quiet wife waiting at home, clutching her belly. Before her was a woman ready to take the biggest stage of her life, not as a supporting role, but as the star. Carmen stood beside her, eyes glistening. "You know, you look like an actual queen. Brandon's going to freeze." Alicia placed a hand on her belly, smiling. "He doesn't matter. What matters is my baby will see her mom never bow down." The premiere night arrived. Brandon got ready early, choosing a flawless black tuxedo. He glanced at Alicia, saying as always, "I'll be back by 11. She nodded, hiding a secret smile. When he left, Alicia waited 20 minutes, then stood. She slipped into the gown, sparkling heels, and clutched a beaded purse. Each step down the stairs was like a vow. Outside, the night breeze brushed her hair, but Alicia didn't feel cold. She got into the car, driving straight to Paramount Studios. When she arrived, a line of luxury cars stretched before the red carpet, camera flashes bursting, reporters shouting names. Alicia took a deep breath, hand on her belly. "Ready, baby?" A soft kick was the answer. She stepped out of the car. Instantly, dozens of camera flashes turned on her. Whispers rose. "Who is she? Who's that? She looks stunning." Alicia smiled, walking slowly, confidently. Each step seemed to shake the air. The emerald gown caught the lights, her pregnant belly proud like a crown. As she drew closer, she saw them. Brandon and Chelsea, not 15 meters away, arm in arm, posing for cameras. Chelsea wore a safe white dress, her smile saccharine. Brandon's hand rested on her waist, looking like a power couple. And when photographers called, "Brandon, Chelsea, a kiss for the camera," Alicia felt heat surge to her face. She stopped, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. Brandon turned, his eyes meeting hers. His face paled instantly, his lips parting as if to speak but catching. Chelsea turned too. When her eyes met Alicia's, her confidence melted into stark horror. Alicia kept walking, step by step, flashes erupting, cries of, "Who's that woman?" ringing out. But Alicia knew, in just a few seconds, the whole world would know exactly who she was. The red carpet air froze as Alicia approached the interview area. Dozens of flashes fired relentlessly, mixed with ceaseless whispers. Who is she? Doesn't she look familiar? That pregnant glow is stunning. Each of Alicia's steps sliced through the curtain of lies Brandon had woven for 2 years. Just meters away, an Entertainment Tonight reporter was interviewing an A-list actor. The live broadcast fed to viewers at home, capturing every moment. Alicia stood at the edge, waiting. Brandon saw her, his face drained of color. Chelsea clung to his arm, whispering something, but her eyes stayed locked on Alicia. The interview ended. The reporter turned to welcome the next guest, and in that moment, Alicia stepped forward, her smile radiant, hand lightly on her belly as an undeniable claim of presence. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clear, confident. "I think there's been a mistake." The reporter flinched slightly but seized the golden opportunity. She nodded to the camera crew. "A mistake, ma'am?" Alicia turned, pointing directly at Brandon and Chelsea, still posing for photographers. "I heard you call that woman Mrs. Thompson, but I'm afraid that's not correct. I'm Mrs. Thompson. Alicia Thompson, and..." She paused, letting her words sink into the tense air. "I'm carrying his child." The red carpet fell silent. Cameras swung to Brandon, his face contorted, forcing a stiff smile. Chelsea went pale, her lips trembling in disbelief. The reporter's jaw dropped, but she quickly regained her professionalism. "Can you confirm, ma'am?" Her voice boomed. "You're saying you're the legal wife of Brandon Thompson?" "Yes," Alicia replied, her eyes never leaving the camera. "Brandon and I have been married for 2 years. I'm his legal wife, and this baby," she placed a hand on her belly, "is ours. I find it a bit confusing that someone else is here claiming a title that belongs to me." The crowd erupted instantly. Other reporters rushed in, cameras flashing, shouts overlapping. "Alicia, over here. Tell us what's going on." "Brandon, any comment?" "Chelsea, do you have an explanation?" Brandon stepped away from the photo area, his face taut. He hurried over, trying to keep a smile, his voice a harsh whisper. "Alicia, what are you doing?" But Alicia smiled at the cameras, as if she hadn't heard. She turned to the reporter. "If anyone deserves to be called Mrs. Thompson tonight, it's me." In an instant, the crowd's focus shifted. No longer circling Brandon and Chelsea, it surrounded Alicia, the proud black woman in the emerald gown, her pregnant belly shining like proof of the truth. Another reporter jumped in. "We've heard you're the CEO of Pinnacle Marketing Group, right? The one behind last year's Cannes-winning campaign?" Alicia nodded, her smile bright. "Yes, and I'm incredibly proud of my team." In a heartbeat, her role reversed. From the secret wife forgotten, she became the true star of the red carpet, not for scandal, but for her achievements. Brandon tried to step in, placing a hand on Alicia's shoulder, but she deftly stepped aside. "Sweetheart, he stammered. Alicia cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. "Are you sure, Brandon? Because this morning, you kissed me and said you couldn't wait for a weekend with me and our baby." The words rang out, exposing his deceit. The crowd nearly exploded. Chelsea couldn't take it, pulling her hand from Brandon's and hurrying off the red carpet, her face flushed with shame. Cameras followed, but quickly swung back to Alicia, the biggest story of the night. A young female reporter thrust a mic toward Alicia, her eyes gleaming. "Mrs. Thompson, what's your message tonight?" Alicia lifted her chin, hand on her belly. "I want to say no woman should be erased from her own story. I'm here not just for myself, but for my unborn child, and for every woman who's been turned into a shadow to serve someone else's image. We deserve to be seen." Cheers rose from the crowd beyond the barriers. Cameras captured the moment. Alicia Thompson, wife, mother, leader stepping into the light, flipping the script on live TV. Brandon, beside her, was reduced to a broken shadow. Within hours of that red carpet moment, the video of Alicia stepping into the live interview spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across online outlets. Hollywood secret exposed live on air. Pregnant wife confronts husband and mistress on red carpet. CEO turns humiliation into stunning comeback. The next morning, Alicia woke to her phone buzzing non-stop. Hundreds of texts, emails, missed calls. Carmen left a string of voicemails. "You're going viral, girl. The whole country's talking about you. They're calling you the Emerald Queen for that dress last night. Check Twitter now." Alicia opened Twitter. It was flooded with the video of her declaring, "I'm Mrs. Thompson, and I'm carrying his child." The clip had racked up over 10 million views in 12 hours. Thousands commented, liked, shared. What stunned Alicia wasn't just the speed of the spread, but the public's tone. They didn't see her as a cheating victim, but as a proud symbol. Top comments read, "The way she held her head high with that stunning belly, iconic." This isn't just revenge, it's a message for every woman who's been hidden. Brandon thought he could erase her from the story. Now who's erased? Meanwhile, Brandon became the target of scorn. Bloggers and journalists dissected every frame of his pale face, every stammered word. A Variety writer penned, "PR disaster of the year. Brandon Thompson, exposed by his legal wife on live TV. No excuse can save him." Chelsea didn't escape either. Photos of her fleeing the red carpet, face flushed, appeared everywhere. Fashion brands that worked with her went silent. Several ad contracts quietly pulled. But the real shift happened on the red carpet that night. After Alicia claimed her title, reporters pivoted. Instead of asking Brandon about his film, they swarmed Alicia, about her company, her Cannes campaign, her journey balancing pregnancy and leadership. Alicia answered each question with astonishing calm. Cameras captured her confident eyes, bright smile, hand gently on her belly. In that moment, the image transcended the drama. It became a symbol of female strength, a woman who refused to be erased. The next morning, major outlets ran Alicia's photo, not Brandon's. The New York Times headlined, "Pregnant Woman Redefines Hollywood Strength in One Night." The Los Angeles Times praised, "Alicia Thompson, CEO, future mother, and now public icon." Morning talk shows replayed the video, discussing Brandon's biggest career fall and Alicia's unexpected rise. In their home, Brandon scrambled to control the damage. He called his manager, his PR team, a few director friends. But the response was the same. "We need time. You should lay low for a while." Brandon slammed his fist on the table in frustration, but the truth was, in an industry where image is everything, a public fall like this was nearly impossible to recover from. Chelsea vanished from Los Angeles days later. Rumors said she fled to New York to escape the backlash. Paparazzi caught her hiding her face, looking drained. In the public's eyes, she went from captivating companion to complicit mistress. Alicia, meanwhile, was flooded with offers. TV stations wanted interviews. Business conferences invited her to speak. Women's magazines wanted her on their covers. Carmen hugged her during a video call. "You don't get it. You turned humiliation into a platform of power. They don't see a betrayed woman, they see a queen." Alicia sat in her office, morning sunlight streaming through the curtains, her hand on her belly. The baby kicked hard, as if cheering with the public. A strange feeling rose in her gratitude, strength. She no longer trembled at the thought of Brandon. He was now just the past, while she and her baby were heading toward a future where the light was theirs. That night, Alicia rewatched the video. She saw herself step onto the red carpet, belly proud, voice ringing clear. "I'm Mrs. Thompson." She looked at herself like a stranger, then smiled. That woman was no victim. She was proof that sometimes, one moment of standing up can change the world forever. If the red carpet was the stage where Alicia stepped into the light, the days that followed were a mirror reflecting a complete power reversal. Brandon woke in a luxury hotel room he'd rented to dodge the press. His phone buzzed constantly, but not with promising calls from producers or directors, only emails from lawyers, PR team alerts, and unavoidable headlines. Hollywood's golden boy unmasked, two-faced husband exposed on live TV. In less than a week, the image he'd built over 5 years was stripped bare. Film projects he'd bragged about being in talks pulled out. Investors didn't want to touch a name tied to betrayal, lies, and public humiliation. Brandon called a director he considered a close friend. Silence hung on the line before a low voice answered. "Sorry, Brandon. This industry's small. I can't risk my reputation for you. Best you disappear for a while." The call ended, and Brandon hurled his phone at the wall, shattering it. But every shard reflected the image of a man losing everything. Chelsea became a laughingstock. On Instagram, thousands of angry comments flooded her old posts. Homewrecker. Woman living off a betrayer's fame. A major fashion brand announced they'd cut ties. A cosmetics company canceled a $1 million endorsement deal. Chelsea, used to cameras celebrating her, now hid behind wide-brimmed hats and sunglasses, but couldn't escape the scandal's shadow. Paparazzi chased her not for her beauty or career, but as the exposed mistress. Alicia? She sat in her bright Los Angeles office, her heavy belly no burden but a glow. Her phone rang constantly, this time with opportunities. Forbes Women wanted an interview. An international business conference invited her to speak. A publisher offered a book deal about female power in a male-dominated world. Carmen held a phone camera, recording Alicia preparing for a live Good Morning America interview. She wore a flowing purple silk dress, proudly showing her belly. When the cameras rolled, the host began. Alicia, millions saw that video. They call you a symbol of strength. What gave you the courage to do it? Alicia looked straight into the lens, voice calm. Because I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for my child, so they'd know their mother never accepted being erased. The studio audience stood, clapping, and the clip spread across platforms. Alicia became a new public icon. Hashtags like #Emerald Queen and #She Is Seen exploded on Twitter and Instagram. Women from everywhere messaged her, sharing stories of being sidelined by the men beside them, thanking Alicia for giving them a symbol to believe in. Brandon watched it all from his dim hotel room. Every social media scroll drowned him in praise for Alicia. Meanwhile, his name became a punchline, mocked in memes and posts. When you try to erase your wife from Hollywood but make her a bigger star than you. He'd craved fame, and now he had it in the cruelest way. Chelsea fled Los Angeles. Paparazzi caught her alone at JFK Airport, dragging a suitcase, face weary. A tabloid headlined, "Mistress flees Hollywood after scandal." Some showed faint pity, but most were cold. She'd chosen to play the game, and now she paid the price. Alicia didn't hide. She appeared at business events, her belly a highlight, not a weight. She spoke on stages. They told me I didn't fit their glamorous world, but I learned when you step out with your truth, you don't need to fit any mold, you create your own. Audiences erupted in applause. Late at night, alone in the house, now hers alone, Alicia sat by the window, hand on her belly. The city hummed outside, but her heart, for the first time in months, was calm. Brandon had lost everything, Chelsea too. But Alicia, from ashes, had risen stronger. She whispered to her baby, "See that? They thought mommy wasn't bright enough to exist. But now the world sees me, and you'll be born in that light. No one can erase us anymore." A sunny spring morning at the Los Angeles courthouse. Outside, dozens of reporters lined up, lenses aimed at the entrance. Alicia and Brandon's story had gripped the public for months, and now, everyone awaited the final act, the divorce dubbed Hollywood's biggest drama of the year. Alicia stepped out of her car with calm poise. She wore a sleek white suit, her near-term belly prominent. No flamboyance, just strength radiating from her steady eyes and deliberate steps. Beside her was Carmen, carrying a briefcase, serving as both assistant and emotional anchor. Brandon arrived after, in a dark suit, his face gaunt from sleepless nights. Shouts erupted as reporters pushed. "Alicia, what do you expect today?" "Brandon, do you still love your wife? Any chance of reconciliation?" Silence was the only response. Alicia walked through the courthouse doors, leaving the media storm behind. Inside, the courtroom was tense as a taut string. Brandon's silver-haired male lawyer stood, voice booming. "Your Honor, Mr. Thompson only seeks a peaceful separation. He cares about the child's welfare and wants to ensure his ex-wife has sufficient financial support." Carefully chosen words, but they couldn't mask the intent. Brandon wanted to keep as much of their shared assets as possible. Alicia's lawyer, a sharp young woman, stood, her voice icy. "Your Honor, we have clear evidence that Mr. Thompson lived a double life for 2 years, publicly denying his legal wife an unborn child. This isn't just betrayal, it's defamation, causing severe emotional harm. My client doesn't ask for pity, but for justice." Brandon sat rigid, eyes averted. Alicia was different. She sat upright, hand lightly on her belly, eyes tracking every word. Each sentence cut like a knife, but this time, the pain didn't break her. It became her weapon. For hours, both sides argued over assets, custody, honor. Brandon tried to justify. I only wanted to shield her from Hollywood's pressures. I never meant to hurt her. But the evidence was damning. Photos, articles, the podcast where he called Chelsea his companion. His lies had no ground left in a room where justice spoke. Alicia finally stood. Her voice rang out. No mic needed. Brandon, you promised to protect me and our child. But you didn't just abandon me, you erased me from your public life, as if I and our baby weren't worthy of existing. You chose your career over our family. And tonight before this court, I want to ensure our child is never disrespected like that again. The room fell silent. Even the judge glanced up at Alicia. In that moment, she wasn't just a plaintiff, but a mother fighting for her child's future. When the verdict came, the judge's voice was firm. The court recognizes Alicia Thompson as the primary custodian, with full financial support from Brandon Thompson. The court also grants the plaintiff's request for a favorable asset division, given the defendant's public deceit and its impact on her honor. Alicia closed her eyes, exhaling. Not for victory, but for freedom. Brandon slumped, shoulders heavy. The career doors once wide open to him now slammed shut, with a harsh social verdict attached. Outside the courthouse, Alicia faced hundreds of cameras, mics thrust forward. She didn't flinch. A smile spread, her voice steady. Today isn't about winning or losing. It's about reclaiming my voice for myself and my child. I want to tell every woman, if someone tries to erase you, remember, your worth doesn't come from their recognition. It's in the pride you carry. Cheers erupted from the crowd. The next morning's headlines were ready. Alicia wins custody and honor. Pregnant woman triumphs in Hollywood's divorce of the century. That night, in her quiet home, Alicia sat by the window. She placed a hand on her belly, the baby stirring softly, as if responding. "Baby," she whispered, "everything I did for you. From now on, we live without fear, only truth and light." Outside, the city buzzed, but Alicia knew a new chapter had begun. The door to the past was closed. Ahead of her and her child lay a wide, radiant road, a future she fully owned. 6 months after the divorce, Los Angeles glowed in a vibrant summer. The house once echoing with Brandon's lies now hummed with a baby's laughter each morning. Alicia cradled her newborn in her arms, gazing at the tiny face wiggling, little hands clutching her finger. In those clear eyes, Alicia saw a new universe, a beginning, a testament that every past wound was just soil for planting strength. She named her daughter Grace. As Alicia told Carmen in the hospital, she's proof that even in the cruelest betrayal, God left me a grace. When Alicia first posted with Grace on Instagram a simple photo of a mother in a white dress holding her baby by a sunlit window, it became iconic. Over 1 million likes in hours. Messages poured in. "Thank you for showing us the pride of motherhood. Grace is so lucky to have such a strong mom." While Brandon struggled to rebuild his career from ashes and Chelsea vanished from Hollywood, Alicia soared. Her book, written during pregnancy, Invisible No More, became a bestseller. In it, Alicia didn't just tell her story but touched thousands of women who'd been hidden, dismissed, or sidelined for a man's spotlight. Business conferences, women's summits, and top universities invited Alicia to speak. Each time she took the stage, audiences stood and clapped. Not just for the sensational story, but for the profound message. Never let anyone define your existence. If they try to erase you, rewrite the story with your own voice. End quote. At a New York lecture, Alicia wore the emerald gown symbol of that red carpet night and stepped to the podium. She looked at hundreds of young women below, their eyes expectant, and said, "I was once pushed aside, even while carrying life. I thought silence protected my family. But silence only protects betrayers. Your voice protects your child, protects you." The room erupted in cheers. Alicia's life no longer revolved around Brandon. He was just a name tied to a bitter lesson. What mattered was Grace and the community of women who found faith in Alicia's story. She no longer had to prove anything to anyone, for her once denied presence had become a guiding light. One evening, as Grace slept soundly, Alicia sat on the balcony, gazing at the twinkling city below the Hollywood hills. She sipped tea, stroking her hair, reflecting on her journey. From the young wife erased, to the pregnant woman stepping onto the red carpet, to now a mother, a leader, a voice for thousands. The path wasn't easy, but every step was worth it. Her phone buzzed a new email from Time magazine. They wanted to include Alicia in their 100 most inspiring people of the year list. She smiled, not for the glory, but because her story had transcended revenge. It had become a legacy. Alicia returned to the room, looking at Grace asleep in her small crib. The baby stirred softly, lips pursed as if dreaming. Alicia whispered, "Baby, I promise you'll grow up in the light, never having to fight to be seen like I did. You'll know your worth from the start." Outside, the world buzzed, but for Alicia, that moment was enough to affirm one truth. Sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't destroying another, but rebuilding yourself more beautifully than ever. That red carpet night, I thought I was just reclaiming my title, but it turned out to be the start of a much bigger journey. I didn't just expose a cheating husband. I proved to the world that even when you're pushed to the sidelines, even when you're carrying a child and erased from the public story, you can step into the light and rewrite your own chapter. Brandon lost everything: his reputation, his career, and the chance to be called a family man. Chelsea left Hollywood in silence. And me? I didn't take revenge with a dagger or a scream. I took it with my presence, by letting the light shine on the truth. And in that light, I found rebirth for myself and my daughter. But this story isn't over, because Hollywood never forgives easily, and secrets still hiding in the shadows will soon claw their way to the surface. Will Brandon come back? Will Chelsea try to revive her career? And am I ready to face a new chapter, when my strength is no longer a secret, but the center of global attention? If you've ever felt hidden, dismissed, or replaced, remember, your light doesn't need anyone's permission. Let Alicia's story be a sign for you to stand up, step out, and be seen. If you want part 2 of this story, leave a comment, share this video, and drop a crown emoji to let me know you're ready to write the next chapter with me.